Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, when we talked to Grover Norquist, the argument was about those who say scrap the Senate Obamacare replace bill altogether versus those who say vote it up and pass it and its current constitution post haste and let's get this moved along so we can get to tax reform. And Grover is in the camp of there's enough benefits here, even though there are problems with it, even though there are improvements that can be made, that it's worthy of being passed on to move the Trump policy agenda along. Well, our next guest, Avik Roy, who is an expert in this area as well, he authored the book Transcending Obamacare, How Medicaid Fails the Poor. He's the editor of Forbes Opinion, and he's got a piece in Forbes that provides 3 ways that the Senate Republican Obamacare replacement bill can be improved. This is also can be found at the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, can be found on their website as well. As joining us, Avik Roy. Thanks so much for joining us, Avik. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be with you.
So one of the reasons...
You're in Chicago, so it's going to be you.
You're in Chicago, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Today, anyway.
Okay. Well, we're happy to have you. Now, one of the reasons we want to have you on is because you're kind of one of the most pronounced voices during this whole Obamacare debacle leading into the current consternation within the Republican camp about what replacement should look like, that really made the case that Obamacare hurts the poor. So for those middle or upper income households that were willing to take a hit on cost, even choice, because they felt like they were doing something good for those less fortunate, they weren't. And it seems to me that that has been lost in the Republican argument on this topic. And so I just want you to address the Medicaid piece of this, why the reform of Medicaid is so important, and how the Senate Republican bill measures up on that score.
So the rhetoric from the left in objection to this Senate bill has been primarily of the variety that tens of thousands of people will die if this bill passes. And that's based on a number of very wildly inaccurate claims. The first is that a lot of people are going to be thrown off their health insurance because of this plan, which isn't true. There'll be some changes and some disruptions perhaps, but not nearly what the Congressional Budget Office and others are claiming. That's number one. Number two, excuse me.
Bless you.
Well, sorry about that. The second thing is that Medicaid, about 60% to 2/3 of the Obamacare expansion of health insurance came through the Medicaid program. And the Medicaid program has shown to have absolutely zero benefit in terms of health outcomes, mortality, anything like that. So to the degree that the Senate bill actually repeals and replaces the Medicaid expansion of Obamacare with tax credits that allow people to buy private insurance, it's lifting them out of a program which will do nothing for their mortality or their life outcomes, health outcomes, things like that, to one that will. Private insurance consistently does deliver those kinds of outcomes.
Now, but how do you cut Medicaid? That's the way to cut Medicaid without looking heartless?
Well, yeah, I mean, whether it looks heartless or not, I mean, I'm a think tank guy, right? I try to care about what's the actual positive result, what the image is or the reputation. That's another issue. But from a standpoint of what the policy will actually do, what the Senate bill will actually do, the reason I support it is because it repeals the Obamacare Medicaid expansion. Again, an expansion that traps people in a program that doesn't actually make them healthier or live longer. And it repeals and replaces, right? Republicans didn't campaign merely on repealing Obamacare. They campaigned on repealing and replacing Obamacare. So the replacement matters. And what this Senate bill does is it gives those people, every single one of those people who is eligible for the Medicaid expansion, will have the option to buy private coverage that will actually do a much better job of helping them out.
And you point out in your piece that I referenced at the top that the Senate bill is an improvement over the House bill on the tax credits component of it because they means test, but there's a way to improve it yet still, and what's that?
Well, so, as you said, the House bill, what the House bill did was it gave every single American, roughly speaking, about $3,000 to $4,000, $2,000 to $4,000 actually, to buy health insurance. Now, that's fine if you're really young or really healthy or your insurance costs are really low. But if you're middle-aged or older and your health insurance costs $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 a year, and you're really poor, let's say you're making $15,000 a year or $20,000 a year, near the poverty line, that's not going to be enough help for you. And so that was the problem with the House bill, is that it sort of over-subsidized people who don't really need the help and under-subsidized people who do. The Senate bill fixes that on the premium side. So the premium assistance in this bill is better. It's more tied to your actual financial need. However, still, let's say you're making $15,000 a year. Your premium is covered through the tax credit, but the deductible in the plan you buy might still be $5,000. So if you're making $15,000 a year, $5,000, one-third of your income, is a lot to spend on deductible. And so the point I make is, why not give people some assistance in the form of health savings accounts that they can use to shop for the care that they need. And if they stay healthy, stay out of the hospital, that money can accumulate in an account that has compound interest. So they have an economic reward to stay healthy, but they do have some assistance to help them get through those high deductibles.
So it's essentially like a grant program?
Yeah, it would be a block grant to the states, that states would each get a proportional amount of the funds that they could use to set up assistance for their populations as they see fit. So instead of having it all done at the federal level, give states the option of how they think they best can use those funds to help their constituents. The reason why I propose this, and something that's in the blog post, is that the Senate bill was scored by the CBO as spending a lot less money than the House bill, about $200 billion less. And so there's some fiscal room to address some of these concerns around deductibles, in my view.
And now, that we're discussing something the Republican Party is not touting enough. Now let's talk about something that they're really leading with, that you suggest maybe you shouldn't lead with so much, and that's the individual mandate. You argue that the individual mandate should be delayed until 2020-21. Why is that?
Well, I'm less wedded to that. I mean, I personally think the individual mandate is terrible policy. I've written years worth of, 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years worth of blog posts talking about how terrible the individual mandate is. But the individual mandate is designed to work with Obamacare. And what's important to remember is that this bill takes about 3 years to phase out Obamacare and phase in a more market-oriented approach. And so the argument here is, if you repeal the mandate immediately, which is what the bill does, but keep the rest of Obamacare in place for a couple more years until the Republican plan phases in, you're going to destabilize insurance markets. And that may lead to higher premiums and higher costs for the people who are already struggling with Obamacare's premiums having doubled. So the idea is you synchronize this. You repeal the individual mandate alongside repeal of all the other things in Obamacare that the bill does, instead of repealing the mandate first and leaving the other things about Obamacare in place for 2 more years and then going to the Republican system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense. But the net of this right now, if you were Senator Avik Roy, is if it's presented to you for a vote, you vote it out of the Senate in its current formation.
Yeah, absolutely. If nothing changes in this bill, I still think this is a good bill. I think you pass it, and then if there are things you need to fix later, you can fix them, and particularly the deductible stuff, you might even be able to fix through bipartisan legislation, because I'm sure Democrats will be in favor of providing some assistance on the deductibles. So look, from my standpoint, I think the bill is great as it is. It's a huge advance for the free market cause and the cause of limited government. And the rest of this stuff is really, at the end of the day, important or unimportant to put in this bill, depending on what you need to get to 50 votes, right? So the holdout senators that are out there, what do they need? What are their policy concerns? What are they trying to address? So what I'm trying to do with that particular blog post is say, here are some ideas. You can throw them all out if you want. That's fine. But if some of these ideas might address the concerns you have and get us to a point where there are 50 votes for this bill, then here they are.
All right. He is Avik Roy, editor of Forbes Opinion, president of the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity, the author of the book Transcending Obamacare, How Medicaid Fails the Poor. Avik, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.